Hey everyone. So we'll get started here. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to hot Berlin for people who are traveling and for people in Berlin. I know this is a lot hotter than it normally is this time of year. So really excited to have you all out here, excited to be part of the Tableau conference. What we'll be talking about today, not only are we going to be talking about some of the work that we've been doing with a major entertainment company, but we'll also be talking more about just weather in general and how weather can apply to your business. And so first of all, just introduce myself. My name is Matthew Porcelli. I work for IBM and the weather company, and I'm a meteorologist. So I do ask if you have any weather questions, save them till the end, and it will be a 2-hour-long bar conversation. So be very careful what type of questions you ask about weather. All right. So I also like to introduce Oscar, who actually just came out from New York as of late last night. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Oscar.
Sure. Oscar Fernandez, Vice President of Insights and Analytics for Legends, which is a holistic sports agency with over 150 major sports entities and leagues across the globe as our clients, and we'll kind of get into our story and who we are. But I've been in data and analytics for the last 22 years across finance, but I've come to the last 15 or 17 years or so to be in sports and technology and analytics. So I'll get into that a little bit later as we talk about who Legends is and what we are and what we've done with IBM and Tableau.
And let's hear for Oscar's first time in Berlin as well. I think that's pretty good.
Very excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. So first of all, weather affects all of us. Okay? It affects us from the most extreme. It affects us to the extremely mundane. So whether you're talking about even just in the last 7 days, we had major hailstorms in southeast France, which actually caused windshields to shatter and a lot of agricultural losses. If you guys were here late last week, there were storms that impacted Germany, which caused a lot of wind damage within Berlin. So when you talk about the most extreme, those are the examples that people think of right away. But in fact, weather affects us more than that. It affects what we wear when we get up in the morning, and I chose poorly today, but it affects what we wear. It affects how we travel. Are we going to take a cab? Are we going to take public transportation? Are we going to ride the bike? It affects us in ways such as what we buy and how much we're willing to buy things for. And it's incredibly exciting because this is a complicated problem to solve in how weather affects your business, because it's not just how it affects you, but those regional variations as well. So, for example, in the UK, if you are from London, when you start buying barbecue, it's about 24 degrees. But if you're from Scotland, a lot hardier from when it comes to cold, about 20 degrees is when you start seeing the pop in barbecue sales. If you go out and buy ice cream, as you would expect, sales of ice cream go up as the temperature rises. But right when you hit about 25 degrees, sales actually plummet because people are afraid the ice cream's going to melt before they actually get it home. And it even affects how much you're willing to pay. So just consider, when you're exposed to sunshine and UV radiation, you're actually willing to pay 21 to 56% more for the same exact products. And we'll go into here, when you talk about anything from the most extreme, so if we're talking about the number of accidents and what actually causes accidents in a given city, this is the city of Washington, D.C. here, and we're looking at all of the fatal and injury crashes across the city. And one of the primary indicators is actually right at the freezing mark. So it's actually when your drivers are unaware of the dangers on the road, right when the icy conditions develop, and that's when you see the biggest issues. So trying to help companies like Department of Transportation's, or if it's related to bicycle sales. So a lot of bike share programs, this was actually a study that we looked at in San Francisco of when are people actually renting bikes and how is rain actually affecting that. So up at the top here, you can see the number of rainy days throughout the year. And what you see in the chart below here is, first of all, it's just fun to look at the profile of when people do ride shares during the week. So you see Monday through Friday, obviously you're getting peaks of people going to work, coming home. Saturday, Sunday, you see that general, people are a lot lazier on Sunday. They don't seem to get out to do exercise until later in the day. But the blue bar that you're looking at here is the amount that sales decline in bike rentals when it rains. And so you'll notice here, it's just fun looking at the little nuances. Tuesday through Thursday, the amount of loss is actually a lot less because your commuters are still willing to get home and ride the bike. But on Mondays and Fridays, when people are really going through that slog and they just don't feel like putting in the extra effort, if it rains Monday evening, everyone's canceling bikes, they're ordering cabs, they're taking public transportation, and the same with Friday. People just want to get home. And again, these are just additional examples around how weather is affecting your decisions every day. So with that, I'm a meteorologist, and it's just exciting to be part of the weather company and seeing how our business has evolved from a consumer industry all the way to a business and working with companies like Legends on solving their weather strategy. So I just want to play a quick video here that takes you through the history of the weather company. Or that. There we go. So meteorologists and the world of meteorology, we were the original data crunchers. The very first supercomputers that were developed in the 40s were exclusively designed to help with weather forecasting. And the first computers, as useful as this would be, took 24 hours to crunch a 24-hour forecast. So not so useful in the beginning, but we've gotten a lot better from there. And even today, IBM has launched a 3-kilometer global forecast model that runs every hour on IBM's supercomputer network. So it's amazing to be working for a company that continues to advance the global technology. And we have to handle data at scale. So every single iOS, every single Android device in the world, we are serving data out to up to the count of 25 billion forecasts a day. And we had to get this right to help companies like Legends, because if you look at that forecast and you look at the weather even right now, and it says it's raining, and your app says it's sunny, you've lost trust. So we had to move data quickly and fast at scale in order to maintain the trust with our consumers. And this is now across the business industry. So how many people flew here today? Or excuse me, not today, but for this conference? Oh, okay. So many European airliners, and actually 40% of airliners globally actually use weather data services for their flight operations every day. So that's everything from the pilots in the cockpit, understanding how to avoid turbulence, to flight operations, repositioning aircraft. And we've been transforming the industry to help you get rescheduled before you're at the airport sweating, standing in a 70-person line to try and get on the next flight. And everything from outage prediction to helping agriculture yield forecasts, as well as retail, which includes everything from advertising to labor planning. These are all things that we'll be talking about today and digging in a little bit deeper with Legends specifically. And again, this is a problem that C-suite level executives are excited about as well. So 100% of 1,000 C-suite executives that we interviewed actually said that weather was a major factor in both revenue as well as costs. So with that, we brought in Legends to help them understand how weather impacts their business. So I'll pass it over to Oscar.
Thanks, Matthew. So to bring it to a real world example from a business perspective for you, first of all, you need to understand a little bit on who Legends is and why does weather matter to us? Why does data matter to us? And how does that help to drive the business and make decisions? Legends is a holistic services agency for sports and entertainment. So we look to provide a world-class experience for someone who's coming to a stadium, coming to a venue, coming to a performance arena, and coming to one of our attractions. So we service a number of lines of business where daily operations are keenly impacted by weather and the experience that we can deliver to our guests. You can see here we have clients in professional sports as well as university and collegiate sports, entertainment, as I discussed. But the one that we're going to drill into here is attractions. So that's the idea of observation decks throughout the world that we manage and maintain. We're going to drill into one in New York. But there, you could imagine, obviously, visibility is going to play key into driving the business. And we'll get into a little bit of the project that we went through with the weather company and how we leveraged the insights that they found for us. Just to give you some size and scale on Legends as well, this is a number of our clients across the United States, but a lot of them here across the pond as well, in Manchester City Football Club, the Shard, which is an observation deck in London. So there's a lot of applications that we learned through the project we did at One World Observatory in New York that we can apply across all these venues. But our business problem at hand at One World Observatory was we had a lot of hunches, a lot of assumptions that we were making that obviously attendance is going to be impacted by visibility at an observation deck, right? You're coming up for the view, you're coming up for the big reveal, but what does that mean to the operations side and to the sales side and to staffing and planning? How can we, if we better learn how to manage those expectations and predictions, how can we staff better? How can we optimize the folks who are on the retail side, the folks who are handling the food and beverage, or scanning tickets, or ambassadors who are there, really being able to anticipate that in a long time frame and a short time frame. That's what we didn't quite have a handle on. But through this project, that was really the goal. Look at, number one, look at historical data and match that to our historical sales, historical attendance, both for ticket sales and for the other experiential components, to see what the correlations are and the impacts might be so we can better plan. And then to be able to predict going forward so our business can do a better job, not only staffing, but understanding perhaps we should have different offers during different times. So if there is low visibility, we are an attraction, right? So you're going to come in, there's other things to see than just the view. There are VR experiences, 4D experiences. There's a number of offerings. And if we can change and work with marketing, if we know there's going to be a certain type of weather, to be able to offer those components, maybe even discounting our prices and have a dynamic pricing based off weather, but offering new packages. So that was the point. We had a lot of assumptions, but they weren't informed. And that's what the project was to inform ourselves so we can build this model that then we can leverage across our other attractions as well. And what we found, just some quick insights that we ran into, obviously poor weather causes a decrease in ticket sales, but doesn't mean that good weather necessarily increases sales. We found things like the humidity caused a $4.3 million average loss in annual sales across the whole year for this one property. So really being able to plan and anticipate against that. Or rainfall, as we talked about, and the impact it had in that bike share example. For us, for every hour of rain predicted in a forecast, that was $17,000 in revenue per hour that we were losing. So we needed to be able to plan and balance to that. Visibility, obviously, it was a huge impact for us. So you can see there's a 64% drop in visibility when it goes below 6 miles. These were all things that we had kind of assumed, but by doing this historical data analysis and the predictive analysis, we were able to verify it. And it was able to lead to the business impact for our marketing department, our operations folks, to say, no, we can make informed decisions. We can know we should have 100 people on staff today, or 50 people, or 80 people, and therefore we can adjust for peaks as well. So this was, as you can see here, is a quote from our marketing director. But it really changed the day-to-day in their outlook and their thinking, and as we approach the other attractions as well, and what we should do and how we should plan and how we should staff, and what we should offer to the clients. So what we found through this, and we went further, which is delivering this data via dashboards so they can be actionable, right? One thing is to do historical analysis, but another is to, which is what we're doing now, is to use this data to drive day-to-day interactions with the business, and so they can make decisions. So this is something we're looking to apply not only at OWO, but across all of our entities. So we're doing it, we run Live Nation, which is a entertainment amphitheater business for us, around 42 venues across the United States. They're mostly outdoor venues. So not only are we looking at weather operationally, but also what should we offer as a product mix, right? If at a certain temperature, as we discussed in the ice cream example, well, sure, you might think people are thirsty when it's hot out and you're gonna wanna drink beer, but depending on the artist, depending on the venue, depending on the location, you can be hyper local with your weather to decide, well, no, it should be this type of beer, or it should be this type of a wine, or therefore we can drive our menu mix and do that dynamically by using all those data points. And for us, it's a great marriage of all of our actual dashboard analytical reporting is done via Tableau for all those 140 venues where we deliver data, and now we're able to leverage this weather data to provide further insights. So for us, it's really, this project was an eye-opener for our observatories because there was an obvious use case, but now we're looking to apply it across the board, and whether that's when we go off and we're helping to build a stadium and understanding the weather impacts for construction, or the impacts, as I talked about, for an event that has an open air aspect to it. So it's really been a huge success for us, and we're really excited about continuing the relationship. Yeah. You know, Matt.
Hey, thank God. Thanks, Oscar. So with this platform, we're actually able to derive the insight in how weather is affecting your business so that you can take action on it. So just like One World Observatory, Legends, and those other venues, you can also take advantage of this with your own data as well. So the first thing, just from how you get started here, how do you get access to this weather data? So this is the base tier. This is the valuable data that goes into these forecast models. And the important part about these data connectors, other than importing the data into Tableau, we have basically built a historical data set that is friendly both from a training perspective to what you then feed forward in the forecast. So exactly the same time buckets, exactly the same variables, exactly the same location that you're training off of is exactly the same location that you're feeding forward into the model. So I'm going to attempt to do this on the fly, but I'll show you guys how you can pull in data using some of these web data connectors today. So first of all, how many of you are familiar with web data connectors by show of hands? Okay. It's not a very well-known connector, but a lot of our services come through REST services today. So when you get into Tableau, you will see here, of course, alphabetical order. It's going to be almost the very last one on the list. And if you click on a web data connector, you simply need access to a URL to port in. So we'll pull in the historical or the HDAT web data connector. Okay, we populate that right here. And this gives you all the fields that you need to actually pull in this data. So let's look at we'll look at Berlin zip code, so 10315. So I'll punch that in here. I'll pull in Germany, and we'll look at, since it's so hot, we'll look at temperature here. And then we can specify a date range. So let's say I want to pull this in from January to today. So we'll go in, we'll pull in for June. We'll do June 18th. And then here's the section where everyone has to close their eyes for 2 seconds so you don't get free data right away. Okay, go. If you had a 30 frame per second, I think I beat it just then. So. Okay, so once this comes in, you go in and update this data. And this can update on a regular basis. But boom, this data comes in from your REST services directly into your Tableau environment. And then from here, you can immediately start playing with the data. So I'm going to go into the sheet here. I'm going to do a couple conversions to get the data into Celsius so we can view it here. So right away, I'm going to create a calculated field. And first of all, before I go any further, and I know this will be a bit small on the screen here, we've bucketed this data in a way that makes sense to your business. So not only do you have a 24-hour max-min average available for each of those variables, we've also bucketed the day into 6-hour segments, and we've also done it at 12-hour segments, so day and night, dependent on if you want to block out certain time periods that just don't relate to your business. So for example, One World is certainly closed late at night, so you wouldn't have to deal with overnight data. So from here, just going to create a calculated field, and we'll call this local day max Celsius. Okay, and then we'll pull in the min here as well. Local day min Celsius. And one last item we'll do here, which will be fun, is let's do one more calculated field from max, which will be this minus the local day min Celsius. So we'll get a difference here. So we'll say difference in Celsius. All right. So now we'll pull in, we'll start with our dates in the column, and then we'll pull in here. We'll look at the min to start in the rows, and we'll look at that across the data we just pulled in. So here you can see it for each of the days for the for 2019 to date. And then just for funsies, we'll pull in the difference here and we'll label that under size. So that will actually give us, if we're looking at a Gantt bar, that'll give us the high-low temperature, pretty nice. And then we'll also bring in the local max under color, just so we can get some pretty colors here. But just like that, I mean, you're starting to see the information here related to how temperatures have affected a given area. And sure enough, as we slowly scroll to the right here, you guys will see the heat kicking in for June. So these are temperatures all the way up to 35 degrees over the past couple days. And this data is available all the way down to the zip code level. So just understand, when we're pulling in this data for training, you are getting this data specific for your store locations. So just a really quick sample of how our web data connectors work. And this same data, so here's an example pulling for the entire year. And by the way, if you look at the temperatures here in August from last year, you're pretty much at the same stage. So we're about 2 months ahead of schedule here as far as seasonal from last year. And this data, just the same, if we look at the next 15 days, I'm sorry to say, but we do have another couple hot days on Monday and Tuesday next week. So for those of you flying back to the UK, you'll probably get away in time, but it looks like it's going to be another couple scorcher days here for Berlin coming up. But again, just note, the data that you're feeding in and training for models is exactly the same data that you're dealing with forecasts, so it's really easy to start building in those prescriptive recommendations for your business. So when we look at what we're talking about from an insights perspective, you know, weather data is the fuel. So this is what feeds into the model in addition to your client data in order for us to access our machine learning environment. And we provide a model as a service, which then trains those models and provides back every single hour what the next 15 days will affect that KPI. And that KPI can be anything from labor, if it's related to, if you're looking to forecast ticket sales. It can be related to the cancellation rate that you expect for a given day. This can be related to the number of sales or the number of units, or even in the case of manufacturing, this could also be related to issues on the assembly line. And we're here to take you through a journey. So it's not just about the educational aspect. So trying to understand how weather impacts your business is incredibly important, especially from a financial perspective. If you can remove the weather factor from your finance to understand that, hey, weather affected your quarter last year, but weather affected your quarter last year by 15.5%. And being able to understand the specific factors that have affected your sales by region, we can do that for you. In addition, when it comes to prescriptive, so once we get through the education, the prescriptive, we talk about the tactical as well as the strategic. So your tactical, the next 2 weeks, we can do this by day, and this is really going to help you understand labor planning. This is going to help you understand demand planning. If you're in retail, it's things like planograms, replenishment cycles, merchandising, and even for CPG companies, trying to understand your supply chain over those next 2 weeks. And then we have strategic. So a lot of advertising opportunities, they require sometimes 8 to 12 weeks advance notice. There's a lawn and garden company that we've deployed this solution with, multi-billion-dollar lawn and garden company in the US that currently uses this solution to position their television advertising in the beginning of the year. And this forecast goes all the way out to 4 months, so you can understand how your business will be impacted over the next coming months. And then really just understand this is your KPIs, and you have to look at what are your decision points. So it's not just understanding historically what affects your business. It's also from an advertising perspective. We all know security and privacy is extremely important here in the EU. But even an IP address contains a general location, and an unknown user can still use weather as an external factor to provide targeted advertising. So whether it's the type of fashion that you're wearing, or the type of shoes that you want to target, or the type of ticket sales that you want to push because you know the next 3 days are optimal for your customers, that can happen in the moment every 5 minutes. The next 2 weeks, as well as the seasonal, you're talking the tactical from shipping and staffing all the way out long range strategic. So some of you may have heard this story if you stopped by the booth, but I do think it's incredibly telling around how weather really impacts business. And it's another use case around manufacturing. So there's an aluminum car parts manufacturer here in Germany that has to meet production quota for car cylinder heads. And they came to us with the problem, and the chart you're seeing here at the top is based on how much production quantity they were driving per day. And in red, that was when they were seeing scrap rates in excess of 25%. So imagine getting into work, you're putting in your hard 8-hour shift, and 25% of your product just has to get thrown in the garbage. It's incredibly wasteful for labor, incredibly wasteful for parts, and incredibly wasteful for energy. So we first looked at what might be obvious. Hey, when these guys are running full throttle, is this actually what's causing loss? And there's really no comparison here. When we looked at it across time, now we're starting to see something. It does look like between May and September, that seems to be the time period where we're seeing those massive losses off the assembly line. And in one case, I can't even imagine, nearly 70% of that product coming off the assembly line had to be scrapped. So this is just a simple example, but it's something to start thinking about your business and how weather relates to your KPIs and your industry. Dew point, which is the measure of moisture in the air, had the #1 correlation to the scrap rate. We didn't quite understand this because we didn't understand the specific business, but when we brought it to the business, they knew immediately what was going on. In the aluminum industry, when you're building molds, you use sand molds, which are very moisture dependent. So when there was high moisture content, it sucked in that moisture, and as soon as the molten aluminum hit that sand mold, boom, water vapor infused into the mold and caused it to crack. And so now that we understood the problem, the great thing about weather is that weather can be forecast. So now we can be prescriptive in taking action around these issues with weather. So when you look over the next 15 days, we can look at the forecasted dew point and understand, hey, next week we have 2 days that are going to hit that critical threshold. We can either move up the number of third-line workers in the beginning of the week to meet quota. We can even shut down the factory during these highest days if the costs are just too high and not worthwhile to run the factory. Or you can get all the way down to the specific hours where it may just not be worth running the factory. And again, these are just major cost savers, both from a labor perspective, a parts perspective, and energy, and how weather helps solve that problem. So when we get into retail, and again, this is really where weather signals can come in from a sales perspective. We've actually looked at syndicated data that was aggregated for grocery stores across the US to understand how different weather phenomenon affected buying behavior. And this took many, many weeks of not only doing the data science, but also really publishing the dashboard here. And we worked with the consultant Slalom, who has an office in the UK, to help us build this out. What you're seeing here, this is where I grew up. This is the northeast of the US. And we are looking at various weather factors. And what we're saying is, if temperatures are warmer than normal, or if there's more cloud cover than normal, or if there's more humidity than normal, what products in grocery stores are actually driven by that type of demand? And it's really fun as a geeky data science person. You know, if we look at warmer temperatures than normal, passing those gut checks is incredibly important. So when you look at warmer than normal temperatures, we see here on the right things like bottled water, things you would hope to see. So bottled water, beer sales, sports drinks, ice cream. But then you start seeing byproducts. So a lot of people going out for barbecues, so things like carbonated beverages. And when we're talking about potential uplift here, across the Northeast, bottled water has a $312 million surge across that quarter when you have warmer than normal temperatures. It's huge opportunity. And then you have byproducts of barbecue, so your salty snacks, your carbonated beverages. And then you start seeing some interesting things popping up here, such as pet food. And what's happening, it's human behavior. When conditions are nice, you're actually having people foregoing their normal routine. So instead of going out and buying pet food, which is something they need to do every month, they postpone it for a week to wait until the weather is worse, and then they commit to taking those extra routines and going through their normal chores. More rainfall than normal. You're seeing here on the list things like salty snacks, chocolate candies, people staying indoors. If you look at more snowfall than normal, milk and bread right at the top, but then people also really settling in with a delicious red wine. But then when you scroll down here and you start looking at things like frozen pizza, these are people who no delivery services are going to be hampered, but they still want an easy meal that they throw into the oven. So you see sales surge in frozen pizza as well. But on the flip side, well, actually, I'll dig in, just really interesting to see the profile here. You can also see from a quarterly component, there are different models by time of year, because at certain points of the year, people get used to the warmer temperatures. It's not so much a shock factor or a seasonal first. So if you break down things like bottled water, you actually see two different peaks. So there's a surge in bottled water sales when things are warmer than normal in the spring, because people are excited. They get out of the house. It's finally the first warm day. But when conditions are warmer than normal going into Q4, this is people's last chance to get out and get their exercise outdoors. So it's actually driving more water sales than they normally would see at that same time. But vice versa, for every good story, for every demand boost, there is a loss. So products that see hits from the same type of weather phenomenon. And right there at the top, soup, the #1 hit throughout the year. And if we look at the profile of soup, you can see, again, warmer than normal temperatures throughout the winter and the spring. This is when soup sales drop like a rock. And you also see frozen dinners. So people actually willing to go outdoors and go to their restaurants and enjoy the day. And I mean, we're just digging into the surface here. So it's just exciting to really explore many different product categories. And this is the exploration we want to do with you and your sales, and to help you understand exactly when you break down the types of weather that are affecting your various store locations. And again, this digs all the way down to county level here. Every single county has its own story. And by aggregating, we can really help you mobilize your supply chain. So once you understand how weather impacts your business, again, this is where you get into the forecast. So looking at demand over the next 15 days, and again, looking at that supply chain, so we can highlight specifically which days and quantify by how much those sales are going to be impacted by various product categories by location, so that you can really make sure that product is at the right distribution centers at the right time. And again, just factoring this back into staffing. So if you look at things like foot traffic, ticket sales, you can understand and break down, how many staffing changes do you need to add an additional person to maintain that customer experience, or is it worth cutting the staff? And it's up to you. It's based on your capability. We've talked with customers. Legends is able to look at staff and cutting back even up to 72 hours in advance. We've talked with contractors and supply companies that are able to do this with hourly workers even within 48 hours to save on cost savings. That's not going to be the same across every business, but again, the KPIs, the cost savings, it's specific to you and the insight that you're looking for. So again, looking at retail, these are the primary factors here. So looking at both demand planning as well as things like store performance, these are the key KPIs. But again, behind the scenes, we've really only brushed the surface of the types of data sets that are available to serve out to you. We actually have a whole host. How many of you are familiar with Mapbox here? Okay. They're also a partner of Tableau, but they're currently using a lot of our geospatial data to serve out weather data to populate across the globe. And even things around probabilistic. So instead of when you look at your phone, you see a single forecast, we are bringing in over 170 models and can give you the full distribution of potential weather effects on a given day. So you can really understand from a scenario planning perspective, is this a confident decision I'm making, or is this something where I should wait and see until the forecast gets more confident? It's a lot more business driven than what we provide, obviously, from a consumer perspective. We have seasonal forecasts. We've been doing gas trading in Europe now for almost 35 years. So a lot of the work we do around analytics is looking long range at how seasonal changes are affecting the purchase of gas degree days. And then even specialty, we're using weather data today to help with yield forecasting. So people that work in commodities, both energy as well as agriculture, we're building out products to help you as well. And again, we've only brushed the surface of the integration, and we're looking to you guys to help us define exactly what data you need for your business, and we'll get there with you. So please, if you guys are interested, take a photo of this slide. I know there will be some handouts right here at the end, but there is a Tableau trial which will get you access to our APIs for both the HDAT and FDAT data and those web data connectors. In addition, I mean, we're here for an extra hour. I think we're pretty close to the end, but please email us, weather@us.ibm.com, and we're more than happy to set up a call. We have several representatives. Julia's in the back, if you want to wave. Oh, there she is. As well as Beth. And Julia is actually based here in Germany, but we also have representatives in the UK to help you guys out, travel on site, and talk about your opportunities. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your time and open up to questions.